eventually start navigating their way through the Rocky Mountains. Now, I've driven through the Rocky Mountains, and driving in a car in the 2000s, it's difficult. I can only imagine these people with, using 1800s equipment, climbing through snowbound passageways in the Rockies at high elevations. It is such a great achievement that they were able to do that. On the other side of the Rockies, they were able to find the Columbia River, a major river system that is in the northwestern part of the U.S., which is going to be pretty important. Oh, I also forgot to mention, when they meet up with the Shoshone, Sacagawea's tribe, she is reunited with her family, hence why they call that area Camp Fortunate. So she gets to see her mother and father and family again. Sacagawea then chooses to stay with the Corps and continue the expedition with them rather than staying with the family from whom she was taken. What an amazing lady. By November of 1805, they reached the Pacific Ocean in the areas of Oregon, near Canyon Beach, Oregon, which is a really pretty area. If you've ever watched the movie Goonies, that's where they filmed it. And there they make their winter camp. And this moment will be the time when the first American citizens will have made a transcontinental journey, starting from the East Coast, the Atlantic coast, and ending on the Pacific coast. That's a big deal. In the spring, they start heading home, and their journey home goes much faster. They split up at one point to try to track ground faster. And B, when they hit the Missouri River, they're now going with the flow of the river, which allows them to move much more quickly. And they'll arrive home in September of 1806, after having spent so much time away from their families. When they arrive there, they are national heroes. We talked about Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea. There's a couple other members of the Corps Discovery I'd like to mention. The notes show there's over 50 guys, and these were rugged dudes. They left everything to go out into this wilderness that in many ways was untamed, that they didn't know anything about, to go and explore and see what this land was like. They are the first people to see grizzly bears. They're the first people to see mountain lions. They're the first people to see prairie dogs. They're the first people to experience so many different aspects of the natural animals and plants that are in the western part of our country. They are the first U.S. citizens to see these things. Another real important member of the Corps is this gentleman, a man by the name of York. York was Clark's slave, who was given to him when he was 6 years old. That's kind of crazy to think about, right? At 6 years old, you're given another human being as your birthday present, who is also your age. And York and Clark grew up together, and he became his friend, even though he was a slave, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about and fathom. But they were pretty much lifelong companions. Like, York went with Clark wherever he went. And during the Corps Discovery, every decision that was made, all right, do we go down this fork of the river or this fork of the river? Do we go and try to talk to this tribe that's in this area? Do we try to eat this food? Every decision, how are we going to ration everything out? Every decision was voted on equally. All of the members of the Corps voted. Lewis and Clark didn't have a greater or less vote as the commanders of the Corps. They all voted equally. It was a true democratic body. And that meant that York and Sacagawea were the first African American and the first woman and the first Native American who were allowed to participate in a democratically governing body under the auspice of the government of the United States. That's pretty cool. There is also another partner of the team, a non-human member. Lewis had bought a dog with him, a very big Newfoundland dog, who was an excellent hunting dog and just became almost a part of the entire family. In many ways, the Corps themselves, in order to survive, spending so much time together out in the middle of in this frontier area, really became a family. And Lewis's dog, Seaman, was their family pet. Some really cool literature and stuff about his adventures with Lewis and Clark. So, the legacy of Lewis and Clark, one, they produced the first accurate maps of the West. They identified over 300 different plants and animal species for the first time to the Western world. If you look here, you can see this is Meriwether Lewis's notes on the prairie grouse, a type of bird. They established peaceful relations with Native American tribes. Here you can see the peace medal, which shows a tomahawk and a peace pipe crossed together with shaking hands. And Jefferson gave these to Lewis and Clark to give the tribes to show that they were coming in peace. Here we see a prairie dog. Not only were they the first American citizens to see a prairie dog, they captured one, which took days and days of chasing and trying to catch these prairie dogs. They captured one and sent a live prairie dog back to Jefferson to observe, which is kind of wild. Another crazy thing, they only lost one person. They met, they're coming and traveling into areas where there are native tribes that weren't necessarily happy that they were there. They were in the Rocky Mountains with very little equipment. They had to survive winters in North Dakota, in the Rockies, in Oregon, once again, on their own, not able to go to the store or anything like that. And they survived. Only one person died, and that person died of appendicitis. Their appendix burst open. There's actually a monument to the one member of the Corps of Discovery who passed away in Sioux City, Iowa. And in a new country, and that's what America was, where we didn't have the history and legends and the past that countries and people from around the world had. We didn't have much of a history yet. This, in many ways, became the Odyssey story, the mythology story of America, of these group of Americans facing the unknown, going into the frontier and exploring and working together. In many ways, became this almost mythology for Americans of the time. It is really impressive and inspiring, and we'll see that waves and waves and waves of people will follow the pathway of Lewis and Clark and start settling the western frontiers. In many ways, they opened those doors. And lastly, but not, it was the first true democracy of the U.S. government, having Sacagawea, York, and all the other members having an equal vote. So, what role did Sacagawea play in the Corps of Discovery? And would they have been successful without her? Why or why not? I look forward to reading your answers. Have a fantastic Thursday, friends. See you tomorrow for Friday.